Right, hello guys, welcome to this video. It's kind of a tactica video and an overview of the 2,500 point list which I managed to win my local tournament with. I'll talk you through the army list first and then go over the roles of each squad and what the philosophy and everything of it was. There was a lot of, I want to say, hate towards the new Wraith Knight rules. And people were terrified about how they were going to take it on. If you're a member of the mini wargame vault, you might have remembered, I think there was a British lad on called David. He did play some Tempestus against Dave quite a few months ago, but then he came back and brought Eldar and Dark Eldar and Harlequins against Dave's, I think it was Demon King. And he took on 3 Bloodthirsters altogether and managed to kill them pretty much with leadership tricks. So that's where I got the idea from, and I built this list around it with enough anti-tank, anti-monstrous creature, anti-anything basically. So I'll talk you through what I actually have in each list. There is 5 formations and combined arms detachments altogether across 4 different books. So it's a lot, but I thought it synergized quite well. So for the troops choice, we've got 2 lots of 10 warriors from Dark Eldar, 2 splinter cannons in there, and they ride in the 2 raiders that you see there. Night shields and splinter racks on both. The HQ is an Archon. He's almost bog standard, but he's going to be going with the Armour of Misery and a Webway Portal. And that was it for me HQ choice and troops. Fast attack, 2 lots of 3 Reavers with 2 cluster caltrops, 5 Scourge, 4 Haywire Blasters. I know that one's a Heat Lance, but I've only got 3 Haywire Blasters, and obviously 1 with a Shard Carbine. A Ravager, 3 Dark Lancers and Night Shields, and another empty Raider just with Night Shields. Sorry, 2 Raiders with Night Shields, and the Razor Wing, completely standard. So that is what we are starting with for the Dark Eldar force. The other things that we're adding is the Scalper Squadron formation, 2 Venoms and 10 Racks. Both Venoms have 2 Splinter Cannons, and each of the 5-man squad of Racks has an Ossifactor. We then move across. We have an Eldar combined arms detachment or an allies detachment, whichever one you see. We've got Farseer, jet bike, that's it. 2 squads of 3 jet bikes. That's it, no upgrades, no scatter lasers or shuriken cannons, nothing. We then took the Crimson Hunter Exarch with 2 Bright Lance and the Pulse Laser. We've then got the Hero's Path formation here from the Harlequin book. The Solitaire, standard. I did want to give him Segarax Rose, but I didn't have the points, unfortunately. Death Jester, again, standard. Shadow Seer, Mastery level 2, and Mask of Secrets. And then the final part of the army is an Eldar Aspect Host. We've got 6 Fire Dragons with an Exarch, 5 Dark Reapers there with, I can't remember the name, but the Strength 8 AP3 missiles. And then we've got the Warp Spiders there as well. So, we'll start back with the Dark Eldar. Obviously, Poison Boats, absolute mincemeat of monstrous creatures, and even Marines with 3-up army, you can take a good chunk out of them. Running them this way, you've got 24 twin-linked poison shots when they're inside the Raider. The Raider can still jink, and they can still fire a full ballistic skill. What I normally do is, depending on the game type, I'll either keep 1 off the board or possibly both, depending on what I'm facing off against. They're there literally to mow stuff down, you know, take on the bigger creatures. For example, wraith lords, even wraith, tyrannid monstrous creatures, Necron Catan shards, or any other of the shards, in fact, and things like that. Good sized, high toughness, multiple wound models. They can chomp through them pretty effectively. The raiders, just leave them with disintegrator cannons. You're going to be snap shooting, strength 5, AP 2. Again, it's nothing to really snuff at. I think disintegrator cannons are quite good. I mean, Wraith, for example, Wraith Guard even. Yeah, you're winning on 5s, but then they're not getting a save. And Terminators, for example, you're winning on 3s and forcing them to take an invuln instead. So that's why I go for them. The Ravager, deploy it in cover, sit it in the backfield, let it shoot out. Doesn't have to jink to get its 3-up cover save because of the stealth. The Archon here, the Armor of Misery confers a -2 leadership within 6 inches. Webway Portal means it can deep strike without scatter. So what would happen if you attach fire dragons to him and put him in a raider without scattering? So you stick him in a raider, you drop him where you want him, you can make mincemeat of a tank because you're within melter range, and you've got the further -2 leadership, which means any occupants that are inside are probably going to end up being pinned if they're not fearless, or if you've then got something else to shoot at them, you know, they've got the extra -2 if they take a morale check. And obviously the reason he's in a raider, 3-up jink means you've got to get through those 3-up jinks to be able to destroy it. And even then, depending on what turn it is, if he's fearless, he confers fearless to the fire dragons as well. The fire dragons, because they're part of the aspect host, will be ballistic skill 5. So ballistic skill 5, anywhere you want on the board within melter range, that's just awesome. So that's why I take that. The Scourge obviously come in turn 2, 3 onwards. If there's any tanks towards my table edge or anything, I can get them to come on from the table edge. Alternatively, I can deep strike them in an open area. The range of the Haywire Blasters, I think, is 24 inches. Let me just double check. But move 12, shoot 24 to Haywire a tank. That's just, it's awesome. Awesome. But yeah, that's why I take them. You really, really cannot not take Haywire Scourge. They're probably the most effective tank hunter things that you can get besides fire dragons. Let's have a look. Haywire Blaster, range 24 inches. So that's awesome. The Reavers, kind of mid-table objective grabbers, or ones that your opponent might have left forgotten in the backfields. Obviously the Skilled Rider means that they ignore terrain, and 3-up jink. I don't give them any weapons because 9 times out of 10 they're going to be jinking all over the place with them only having a 5-up armor. Give them cluster caltrops. You know, if there's an odd vehicle, a low armored vehicle or something, or you can get behind it to hit it from the backside, or even, you know, a few models that's just aggravating you. You can charge them in. You've got your cluster caltrop. You've got your normal hammer of wrath. And obviously they've got the combat drugs as well. So I mean, toughness 5 jet bikes, you're going to get your feel no pain on nearly everything. By the time you get your feel no pain, I love them, absolutely love them. So they're there as a mixed unit. They're an aggravation unit. Your opponents going to go for them. If they survive because of the 3-up jink, then great. They can grab an objective. They can take out, maybe it's a small unit, or something that's a little bit annoying that you don't really want to divert too much firepower towards. So that's what they're there for. The Razor Wing, leaving it totally stock, apart from I give it 2 of the Strength 6 Shred missiles, and I give it 2 of the Fleshbane missiles. The reason I give it the Fleshbane ones is because what if you get a monstrous creature like a Wraith Lord? or a wraith knight. At least with Fleshbane, you're wounding on a 2-up, where with strength 6 shred, you're wounding on a 6, and yes, you're re-rolling, but you're still only wounding on a 6. So that's why I keep it like that. Keep the disintegrator cannons on it, because if you come on, shoot all 4 missiles, full ballistic skill, snapshot the dizzy cannons, you might get lucky. Once they're gone, you're probably going to be jinking anyway. Fly him back off if he's still alive. Come back, rain disintegrator cannons down on something. The Venoms and the Scalpel Squadron here. Deep Strike turn 1, -1 leadership within 12 inches. So, if there's something in the open, and I did this in the tournament, there was a Wraith Lord in the open, dropped both of them straight in front of the Wraith Lord and dropped the Wraith Lord for first blood. The Scalpel Squadron confers D3 first blood instead of just 1 point. It's risky. It's not always guaranteed. You've got to think about the order that you shoot things to make sure that you get them to do first blood. If there's a big squad that you're worried about chomping through, shoot something else at them first, finish them off with these. So obviously, between the two of them, you've got 24 poison shots, and then you've got the 2 Fleshbanes from the racks. Now, you can go either way with them. What I find is they can do a lot of damage to somebody with very little armor saves, such as gaunts or orcs. If you roll decently on the D6 table to do extra wounds. Or you can go for something bigger, like I actually shot mine at a Wraith Knight. Fleshbane still wounds it on a 2-up, and it's still AP2, forcing it to take its invuln and feel no pain. It's not as reliable, but at least you're forcing its saves down. Now obviously turn 2, your opponent's going to go for them Venoms, because you know they're going to be dropped pretty close to your opponent's deployment zone. They're going to be straight away there, and your opponent's going to take the bait, go for them, and try and kill them. If the Venoms go down, they go down. Fine. If the racks end up getting pinned, fine. The Fearless turn 2. So straight away you've got those Fearless units that your opponent might not necessarily always go for, but they're always there aggravating something. And if your opponent does go for them, great. They're a sacrifice unit. They've got feel no pain, so they might live, they might not. But the fact that your opponent's going for them after the Venoms and everything have done their job, you know, it diverts all that firepower away from the rest of your army. And, you know, if the racks disembark, the Venoms and the 2 rack units themselves, you've got 4 spots on the board within 12 inches of those 4 spots where you've got -1 leadership shenanigans going on. And if you've got the Archon nearby as well, if he's come in and one of these units is still alive, that's -3 leadership on any morale checks or anything nearby. So it can work quite well. Because they can spread out, essentially, you've got a very good and large 12-inch bubble around quite a few different models, and to cover a lot of the board. So that is what they're there for. If they get the first blood, great. But they're there, basically, I'm here, shoot me, deal with me. If they survive, they give the extra -1 leadership, which is great. So, we then come across to the Hero's Path formation. Now these have, they're not allowed to join any other units at all, okay? They have Stealth, they have Shrouded, and Infiltrate. So, what I do, first of all, we'll talk about the Shadowseer. Shadowseer I stick in the other Raider. And the reason I do that is because although she has Infiltrate, you're probably not getting that close to your opponent. You might be 6 inches out your deployment zone, you might be slightly more. But the problem is, if you're that far up the board, your opponent's going to shoot her. That's not what I want. So what I do is I stick her in a Raider. Now, with having the Mask of Secrets, it confers a further -2 leadership within 12 inches. And with being inside the Raider, keeps you, it obviously makes the area a lot bigger, for the -12, you know, at least an inch or two in each direction. The power that I try to get is Mirror of Minds. Now, Mirror of Minds, in my opinion, yes, it is a broken power by itself. Now, I'm just going to open the codex and I'll read the power to you as soon as I find it. Mirror of Minds is a focus witch power with a range of 24 inches. The target model and the Shadow Seer both roll a d6 and add their respective leadership values to the result. If the scores are drawn, or if the Shadow Seer's score is higher, the target suffers a single wound with no armor or cover saves allowed. Repeat this process until either the target model is slain or the target model rolls a higher score than the Shadow Seer. Shadow Seer is leadership 10. If she's within 12 of the target, the opponent is at -2 leadership. So, say we cast that power on a Wraith Knight, okay? The lowest roll the Shadow Seer can make is 11, 10 plus the 1 from the d6. If the Wraith Knight is at -2, that's leadership 8. So basically, if the Shadow Seer rolls a 1, the Wraith Knight would have to roll a 4 to stop the power. So obviously, you keep rolling, and now although you can take your invulns, you've still got to keep rolling until your opponent beats you. So that is amazing. And I've actually used this to kill a Wraith Knight. However, the Shadow Seer was not within 12 inches, so I didn't get the -2 leadership. There was a Venom, however, in my opponent's deployment zone, which conferred a -1. That meant that the Wraith Knight had to roll a score of 2 better than me in order to stop the power. Now, it was risky for me because obviously there was a good chance of him stopping the power, but we kept rolling and he didn't. And as a result, the Wraith Knight was slain for first blood in the psychic phase. So it was quite brutal. But if you combine that -2 leadership within 12, if you've got the Archon in the Raider nearby, which is a further -2, and you've then got the Venom or Iraq squad nearby, which is a further -1, that's -5 leadership altogether. Now, obviously, if your opponent is down on leadership 5, highest they can roll is 11. The lowest the Shadow Seer can roll is 11. And as the power states, if the score is equal to, they still take a wound. Now, if you've got somebody that low, with everything in place to bring it down that low, your opponent cannot beat that. So therefore, even if you keep rolling and even if they keep making invulnerable saves, you've got an infinite loop where you have to keep going until the model is slain. So it works out as just a remove model from play move. Now, although I haven't done that on a leadership 10 model before, I have actually gotten I've gotten -3 leadership within 12 inches of a Toxicrene before. The Toxicrene I think is only leadership 7. So when I cast that on the Toxicrene, it was just to remove the Toxicrene from play. So yeah, that was quite brutal. It's a nasty power. It's not guaranteed to get it. But the Shadow Seer is still powerful because of that -2 in the Raider. The Primaris is a decent power, and a lot of the other ones are either buffs or aggravations. And they are handy, they are situational, don't get me wrong. A lot of the Phantasmancy powers aren't that great, but combined with everything else, they're still decent. You can still put out a lot of dice with them. The Death Jester can infiltrate. Permanent vantage point. He's got the Shuriken Cannon or a Shrieker. The Shrieker, I believe, I can't remember, I think it might have Fleshbane. Poison 2+. So it's handy against monstrous creatures, but not against Gargantuan, as you can only poison the Gargantuan on a 6. But even then, the Shuriken Cannon itself, you can use it as a Shuriken. So you're getting 3 shots at strength 6, AP 5. If you kill a model in a unit, the Death Jester has a rule called, I think, Death is Not Enough. And it forces a leadership test at -2. just as though, just like you would have to take a leadership test if you lost 25% casualties. If they fail, they run in the direction that I choose. Now let's have a look at this. Me Reavers, for example, say they are 18 inches away from a unit. If I make a squad run towards me Reavers, and then in the assault phase, I can then charge them because I'm within distance. I can take out a unit that wasn't even within range previously, or I can force them off the side of the table, off my table edge, or off the back of their table, depending on where they are. Now, combine that with the -2 leadership from the Shadow Seer, -1 from the Rax, -2 from the Archon, you could potentially force a double 1 leadership on a squad. Now, again, I have done this. I have forced units off the table with the Death Jester, actually off the side of the table, because I've had other leadership modifiers nearby and caused a wound with him. So that is incredibly handy. The Solitaire, I do infiltrate him. He's a single model. I tend to put him, when I remember, towards the middle of the table somewhere, and because he's one model, he hides very well. If you can put him out of line of sight so that you can see him, but your opponent can't see him from their table edge, quite often than not, they forget about him. And what you get is, basically, the later in the game he blitzes, the more dice he gets. Now, I've used him to effect a couple of times, and I've had him in the right situation a couple of times. Something seems to always go wrong with when I use him. Another thing with him is, because he can infiltrate and he's one model, if your opponent's got any infiltrators and you infiltrate first, if you put him in the middle of the board, what you tend to find is your opponent then really struggles to not get line of sight on him with his infiltrators. So he's quite handy. And like I said, because he's one model, you can quite easily get him within 12. You don't necessarily want him within 12 because you don't want him to be assaulted. So I always tend to keep him about 9 inches outside of my deployment zone. Just enough so that if he needs to, he can still move his 12 and assault something. Now, the way I play him is a character sniper, basically. And I'm going to give a couple of examples of when I have used him well, or when I've tried to use him in the right situation. I played a friend's Tau with them, and I managed to shoot most of the squad with the commander down, so there was only the commander left. And I thought, right, now's his opportunity. He's going to blitz. It was about turn 4, and my opponent had totally forgetting about him because he was out of line of sight. So I blitzed him. I got within about 4 inches of the commander, and I charged. There was 5 fire warriors nearby, and they caused 5 wounds on him on Overwatch, and I failed 3 saves. So he did go down before he got chance to get in. But if he'd gotten in, I'm pretty sure he would have absolutely wrecked face. Another situation is turn 2. I went after Sean's Farseer with him. Now, because he ignores terrain, because I think it's a flip belt, I needed a 6-inch charge to get into his Warlord, which was just stood by himself, and I failed it, fleeted it, and failed again. So yeah, that was a shame that he didn't get into combat there. He still didn't die though, so next turn he actually got into combat with the Farseer who managed to take him out. Another example, I charged a squad of Wraith Blades with him, with another opponent's Spirit Seer Warlord in there. Challenged the Warlord, and he didn't accept, so although I had to go against the Wraith, still managed to take 1 or 2 of them out. Next turn, obviously, the Wraith attacked back, but they only got a couple of attacks in against him, and obviously hitting on 5s because of his weapon skill, his ridiculous initiative as well. basically didn't cause any wounds. I hit and ran out in his turn, charged back in, and then took them out. So that's how I play them. I then take the aspect host formation. Aspect host formation, you have to take the Exarchs. So the Fire Dragon Exarch allows you to reroll to pen. The Dark Reaper Exarch gives you an extra shot. And the Spiders are essentially almost fearless. Fire Dragons obviously go in the Raider with the Archon, like I said. The Dark Reapers are sitting back in cover, and I take the Strength 8 missiles as well. So they have multi-purpose. They've got the Strength 5 AP3 missiles, which are absolutely great for taking out Marines. Obviously Heavy 2, so you're getting 2 shots there, 3 with the Exarch. A Ballistic Skill 5, so you're hitting on 2s because of the formation. And with that, you can mow down reasonably tough infantry. I mean, even Wraith Guard, although you're wounding on 5s, you've got that many shots, you're probably going to take quite a few of them down. They've got slow and purposeful, so they can still move and shoot. And the Reaper Rangefinder, as a Dark Eldar player, I've suffered on the other end of them, not being able to jink, and I can't remember whether it's ignore cover, but they can't jink against it, so yeah, it's nasty. And then with the Strength 8 missiles as well, if you've got a flyer that's on the board, for example, Eldar flyers armor 10, shoot the Strength 5 missiles. You're getting more shots, probably going to get a couple of glances or pens in as well. If you're going against Storm Ravens, shoot the armor the Strength 8 missiles against them. In relation to the Spiders, aggravation. Definitely use them as aggravation. They can run circles round objectives. You can move 6, shoot and run, and then as soon as your opponent shoots at them, dive out the way. So if you've got an objective with a little bit of cover nearby, you can control that objective with them. And they were absolutely invaluable. The guns as well, the monofilament guns, I mean, especially against Wraith, wounded on 2s against the Wraith was amazing. I even actually used them to take the last wound off a Wraith Knight, because they were wounded on 3s. Obviously any 6s cause instant death at AP1. Yes, instant death doesn't work on Gargantuans, but it was still a wound that I had to force him to take an invuln on instead of his normal save. So I mean, assault 2 on them, straight away that's 10 shots at strength 6, wounding the Wraith Knight on 3s. I mean, going back to the Dark Reapers as well, even taking, if you use the strength 8 missiles, they can take on a Wraith Knight wounding on 4s. So, the Fire Dragons, the Reapers, the Dark Lancers that I've got, the Fleshbane missiles, and from the racks, there's a lot there to take on the Wraith Knight, as well as the Shadow Seer's Sighted Power, the Solitaire as well, auto wounds on a 6 when you roll a 6 to hit, auto glances vehicles. The Solitaire actually as well, going back to him, I actually charged him at an Imperial Knight with 2 hull points left and glanced it to death because of the caress. But yeah, the Spiders run absolute rings around objective markers all day long, and keep everything at bay that comes near it, basically. I then take the Crimson Hunter Exarch, or just to point out as well that this formation allows you to reroll failed morale, pinning, and fear checks, I think. So at Leadership 9, getting a reroll is great. The Crimson Hunter Exarch, hitting anything on 2s, strength 8, 4 strength 8 shots, 2 of them being Lancers. It's great. You're rerolling against other flyers. Rerolling the pen against other flyers, sorry, so it's absolutely brilliant at taking down other flyers. He was taken purely as me anti-flyer. If there was no flyers about, shoot a Wraith Knight, shoot something high toughness. Great. And the final part of the force was the Wind Riders and the Farseer. So the 2 Wind Rider squads, just absolute stock. I normally start the Farseer with 3 of them, just to give them extra lookout sirs in case he's targeted. If I have to though, like if I draw domination, I don't want the Farseer up in the enemy's deployment zone. So I would detach the Wind Riders and let them go and grab objectives. But that's what they are there for, is literally move 12, flat out 36, grab those objectives because they have objective secured, and it's the only objective secured I have in the list. The Farseer, I always roll on telepathy, and the reason I do is Psychic Shriek. I Psychic Shrieked a Wraith Knight with -3 leadership nearby, and I rolled quite high. I think I rolled a 4, 5 and 6, so although he got his invuns against it, I actually dropped it to 1 wound in turn 1 because of Psychic Shriek. Basically, move 12, shoot Psychic Shriek in the sighted phase, flat out back behind line of sight, and get out the way. That's how I play him, is kind of a hit and run kind of tactic with him. If you get Terrify, that's a further -1 leadership. So altogether I could confer like -6 leadership in the Psychic phase. If everything's in the right situation. You've then got, I think it's Dominate. If you've got all the leadership modifiers nearby as well, cast Dominate on a non-fearless unit that's going to cause you a bit of trouble. They're going to have to take a leadership test every time they want to do something. And with all their modifiers, it can be quite brutal. Obviously, invisibility goes for itself. But yeah, I like the list a lot. I've got a lot of effectiveness. I've got a lot of things to kill troops with all the disintegrated cannons, all the poison. The disintegrated cannons obviously denying a lot of people saves. They can kind of go for kind of mid-toughness models. I've got enough strength 8 AP2, so all the lancers, the fire dragons, and all of that to be able to deal with monstrous creatures and tanks. The Crimson Hunter as well. Anti-infantry, I've got all the poison from the venoms and the all the warriors, as well as the Razor Wing. I mean, the Strength 6 shred missiles and the Fleshbane can both go massively in your favour. You've got the Dark Reapers conferring obviously anti-infantry with a Strength 5 AP3, or they can take on monstrous creatures with a Strength 8 AP3, and even tanks with that, but especially aiming them at skimmers. You've got the Scourge moving 12 and fire 24 inches, haywire a tank to death. And like I said, you've got your character snipers like your Solitaire in there as well. You've got your aggravation units, which is your Venoms and your Racks, and your Dark Eldar, Reaver jet bikes, and the Warp Spiders. They can get to objectives very quickly, and they're going to annoy your opponent. All the time your opponent's going for them, you've got everything else bearing down in the Psychic phase and a lot of shooting power. So I like this list a lot. It's nasty, don't get me wrong, but I think I've got enough of everything to deal with everything that comes at me. So that is the list. Tell me what your thoughts are. Do you like it? What would you change in it? How would you run it at a lower points value? What would you drop? So, if you've enjoyed the video, please like the channel and subscribe, and check out the battle report that I filmed before the tournament that I played this in, to see Josh rip it apart, or at least try to rip it apart, and see whether or not the whole gimmick of the leadership tricks still works against Necrons, obviously leadership 10, across the board. So, thank you very much.